And Jack Johnson, he's bad. He had to be a bad, bad black man.
Jack Johnson will go down in history as one of the maddest Negroes of all time after this.
They would send him letters saying, you fighting a white man, and nigger, if you knock him out, we'll kill you. He said, just kill my black buggers, I'm gonna knock this white man cold.
Jack Johnson just walked in the room and I said, you can just have my wife. You've earned it.
A man who inspired the greatest of the greats, whether it was Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson. A fighter, not just in the ring, but in life itself. A man who defied the odds, shattered barriers, and lived boldly, refusing to apologize for being himself. This is the story of Jack Johnson, the first African-American world heavyweight champion, a legend whose influence extended far beyond boxing. Welcome to Gloves and Glory. Let's dive in without wasting another moment. Jack Johnson, born Arthur John Johnson, came into this world on March 31st, 1878 in Galveston, Texas, just 13 years after the abolition of slavery. He was the third of 9 children born to Henry and Tiny Johnson, like both former slaves who worked tirelessly to give their family a better life. Henry worked as a janitor and dock worker, while Tiny served as a domestic worker. Despite their humble circumstances, their love and determination provided a strong foundation for their children, a rare blessing in the deeply segregated South. Growing up in an America where lynchings were a horrifyingly common reality and opportunities for Black people were nearly non-existent, young Jack was no stranger to hardship. He once said, "I grew up in a land where lynching was an everyday affair. From the start, I knew I had to fight for my place in the world." As a teenager, Jack found an escape in the raw, rough-and-tumble world of boxing. He started out fighting in informal matches held in back alleys and saloons. It was there that he learned not just how to throw punches, but how to take them. And more importantly, how to get back up every time he was knocked down. Boxing became his refuge, his education, and his way to prove himself in a world that seemed determined to keep him down. His big break came when he joined the Galveston Giants, a group of talented Black athletes led by Frank Childs, a skilled and seasoned boxer. Childs saw something special in Jack, raw potential that needed refinement. He took Jack under his wing, teaching him that boxing wasn't just about brute force. It was a game of strategy, timing, and intelligence. Jack would later say, "Frank Childs taught me the science of boxing," and that science would change his life. By 1898, at the age of 20, Johnson had his first professional fight against Charlie Brooks in Galveston. He won, earning a small purse and setting the stage for a career that would challenge both boxing and society's norms. Despite his growing reputation, Johnson faced immense discrimination. Many white fighters and promoters refused to compete against him, fearing not just his skill, but the implications of a Black man's success. But Johnson didn't back down. He fought harder, saying, "I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every Black man who'd been told he couldn't achieve his dreams." In 1902, Johnson defeated Frank Childs to win the colored heavyweight championship, solidifying his status as the best Black heavyweight boxer of his time. But this was just the beginning. Jack's ultimate goal was the world heavyweight title, a title no Black man had ever held. In 1908, after years of being denied opportunities, Johnson finally got his chance. He faced Tommy Burns in Sydney, Australia, in a highly publicized fight. Johnson dominated from start to finish, toying with Burns until the police intervened to stop the humiliation. Jack Johnson had become the first African-American world heavyweight champion. Johnson's victory was more than a personal achievement. It was a statement. He said, "It was a fight for my people, for everyone who'd been told they couldn't achieve their dreams because of their skin color." 2 years later, Johnson defended his title against James J. Jeffries, a former champion who came out of retirement as the Great White Hope. The fight, held on July 4th, 1910, was billed as the fight of the century. Johnson's skill and composure left no doubt about his superiority, and he knocked Jeffries down in the 15th round. This victory was a triumph not just for Johnson, but for African Americans across the country. Johnson's success came with intense scrutiny and backlash. His relationships with white women, particularly Lucille Cameron, drew the ire of authorities. In 1913, he was convicted under the Mann Act, a law often weaponized to target black men in interracial relationships. Jack's conviction was seen as racially motivated, but he remained defiant. "I loved who I loved and refused to hide it." Fleeing the U.S., Johnson lived in exile for years, continuing to box and live extravagantly. But his legal troubles combined with financial difficulties eventually brought him back. In 1920, he surrendered and served his sentence, still maintaining his fighter spirit. Jack Johnson's influence on boxing and society is immeasurable. He paved the way for future champions like Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali, who often cited Johnson as an inspiration. His defiance of racial norms made him a symbol of resilience and empowerment for Black Americans. Johnson passed away in 1946 in a tragic car crash after being refused service at a diner because of his race. Even in death, his story remained a stark reminder of the injustices he fought against. Decades later, in 2018, President Donald J. Trump issued an executive grant of clemency, full pardon, posthumously to John Arthur Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight champion of the world, for a Mann Act conviction that occurred during a period of racial tension more than a century ago. Today, his legacy lives on in every fighter who dares to challenge the odds. Jack Johnson wasn't just a fighter. He was a pioneer, a symbol of courage and defiance, and a trailblazer who broke down barriers so others could dream bigger. His life reminds us that the fight for equality is never over, and every person should learn from him how to fight with their problems.